Hey, bienvenue mes élèves, and welcome to another great episode of Bonjour and all that. Remember, this is the video series that the Spanish Club at Ukulele High School in Bird Snot, Kentucky does not want you to see. And what is our lesson about today? Well, let's see. It's about the steps of conjugation. So, in this lesson, we're going to do our first lessons in conjugating verbs in French. Now, conjugation is one of those things that you do automatically, really without thinking about it. And so sometimes that can make it a little bit more difficult when you try to explain something that you don't have to think about, because then you're thinking about it. Does that make sense? Well, you'll see what I mean as we get into this. And then as I explain the steps of conjugation, that's going to lead us into conjugating our first verbs in French. So I'm pretty excited about this lesson. All right. What are the steps of conjugation? First of all, what is conjugation? Well, conjugation is when you take a verb and you manipulate its form so that it fits all the ways that we can communicate with one another. In other words, the verb forms change depending upon who is speaking and who you're speaking to. Confused yet? Well, maybe. But again, once you see me work it out for you, it'll make sense. All right, so just hold on with me. All right, the steps of conjugation. Here we go. All right. The first step is find the infinitive. The infinitive is a verb form. All right. In English, it's the verb form that is preceded by the word to. For example, to jump, to see, to do, to have. All of those are infinitives. And they're called infinitives because they're not limited by time. To see is neither past nor present nor future. Right? But yet it's going to be used to help us form all of those. So that's the infinitive form of the verb. In French, I'll show you how you recognize those. All right. The second step is form the stem. So we're going to take our infinitive, we're going to manipulate it just a little bit, change it just a little bit so that we can adapt it to all the different verb forms. Step 3 is set up the subject pronouns, all right, because verbs have to have subjects. And I'm going to show you how you set those up to be used in conjugating verbs. Step 4 is to apply the stem to each form. Every verb form has to have the verb stem. And then finally, step 5 is add the proper endings to each stem. And yes, we do this in English. We just don't do it a lot. But yeah, it does happen. So we conjugate verbs in English, and in French, it's done pretty much the same way. All right? So let me show you an example. Oh, wait a minute. Got to have my man coming down. Okay. Let's start with the present tense. All right, now notice my little play on words here, present tense, and then you see all these presents. Okay, well, I'm trying to inject some humor into the lesson so that you'll find it more engaging, more entertaining. Did I succeed? I hope so. All right, so we're going to conjugate now in the present tense. You conjugate in tenses. All right, the present tense, of course, describes action that is going on right now, at the present time. And since we live in the present tense, it's not so surprising to find out that most of the verbs we use are present tense. All right. Okay, there's a blank screen, but it won't be blank for very long. Get a load of this animation. Here it comes. All right, very good. This is a conjugation table. All right. Notice I have set up here the number. And number means, is the verb form singular or is it plural? If I ask you what the number of the verb form is, I'm looking for one of two answers, singular or plural. All right, then over here we have what is called person. And there is first person, second person, and third person. All right? These are the ways that we communicate with one another, either through first, second, or third person. There are no other ways to communicate except through these three persons. What do I mean by that? First person is when you are talking about yourself. Second person is the person you are talking to. Third person is the person or thing you are talking about. So, first person, when you're talking about yourself. Second person, the person you are talking to. Third person, the person or thing you are talking about. All right, so we've got our number and our person all set up. All right, and I told you we always start with our infinitive. In English, that is the verb form that's preceded by the word to. Let's see how it works in French. Okay, in French, the infinitive is one word that normally ends with the letters ER, IR, or RE. These are the three verb families in French. And they're called ER, IR, and RE because those are the letters that the infinitives end with. All right? Now, ER verbs are the largest family of French verbs. Over 80% of French verbs are ER verbs. Okay, RE verbs are the smallest family of French verbs. Their infinitives end with the letters RE, and then finally, right in the middle, we have our IR verbs, and those are the infinitives that end in the letters IR. All right, so now you know how we can identify French infinitives. It's by the letters that the infinitives end with. All right, so I have chosen a French infinitive. It is penser. Notice that when it is an infinitive, the ER at the end is pronounced A. Penser. All right, and this means to think. Penser, but notice in French it's one word. All right, so we've done the first thing, the first step, and that was find your infinitive. All right, we found it. Here it is, penser. All right, the next step was, remember, to form our stem. All right. For infinitives ending in ER, you form the stem by removing the ER. So we're going to remove these last two letters, and that's going to give us our stem. So when we do that, we end up with the letters PENS. That is going to be our stem for this verb. And you'll see how that fits in very, very soon. All right. Now the next step, remember, was to assign the correct subject pronoun for each form, to set up our subject pronouns. And here they are. All right. Je is first person singular because when you talk about yourself, you use the word I. And that's what je means. First person plural, when you talk about yourself in a group, you use nous, which means we. Okay. Second person singular, the person you are talking to, if it is one person, you use tu, which means you. All right? If you're talking to a group of people, you use the pronoun vous, which means you all, or you plural. And then, third person singular. This is the person you are talking about. And for third person singular, we use the pronoun il. That means he. Now, I didn't put it here because I wanted to leave myself more room here to spell out words. So I didn't put L, E-L-L-E, which means she, but that is also third person singular. So you have il or L, he or she. And then third person plural is il with an S. And then you could also have L with an S, which means they. Because when you talk about someone, you either use the words he or she. In the plural, you use the word they. Okay, so we've got all our subject pronouns set up. Now what's next? Now we place the stem in each form. That was step 4. So again, here's my stem, P-E-N-S. I'm going to place that now next to the subject pronoun in each form. And there you go. All right, now I've got my stem ready. Okay, now the last step is to add the correct ending to each stem. In English, we do this, but we just barely do it because the only form in English that gets an ending is the third person singular. We don't say I see, you see, he see. We see, you see, they see. No, we say I see, you see, he sees. We see, you see, they see. So in the third person singular in English, we add an S. But that's the only form that gets an ending. Well, in French, it's not quite that simple. Each one of these verb forms is going to have an ending. And here they are. For the first person singular, for ER verbs in the present tense, you add the letter E. It's silent, so we pronounce this je pense, I think. For second person singular, you are going to add the letters ES. Again, it is silent, and we pronounce this tu penses, you think. Third person singular, okay, you add the ending E, just like with je. Again, it is silent, so we say je pense, tu penses, il pense. All right, for the first person plural form, we're going to add the ending ONS, on. And now we pronounce that nous pensons. So here's an ending that is not silent. Nous pensons. We think. Je pense, tu penses, il pense, nous pensons. For the second person plural, we're going to add the letters EZ. Now, EZ, when it's at the end of a verb form like this, is going to be pronounced A. So we say vous pensez. You all think. Je pense, tu penses, il pense. Nous pensons, vous pensez. And then for the third person plural, we are going to add the ending ENT, which is silent. So this will be pronounced il pense. They think. Je pense, tu penses, il pense. Nous pensons, vous pensez, il pense. All right? That is the conjugation of the verb penser in the present tense. And this conjugation, this pattern, will work for any regular ER verb. You form your stem the same way, you add the same letters. All right? And that is how you conjugate verbs in the present tense in French. Now, IR verbs, you're going to do it the same way, except they're going to have a separate set of endings. RE verbs, again, you're going to follow the same process, but they will have their own separate set of endings. So conjugating in French is a little more challenging than in English because you have more endings and each verb family has a different set of endings. For now, we'll just worry about the ER verbs in the present tense. And you know I'll have a lesson about IR verbs and RE verbs in the very near future. But congratulations, you just learned how to conjugate a verb in French, you learned how to conjugate in the present tense, and you learned how to conjugate over 80% of French verbs in the present tense. Congratulations. All right, mes amis, it's time for me to say au revoir et à plus tard.